All right, let's get started. Hey, we're at episode 2. Welcome to Handshake and a Smile, everyone, where we talk about old school values and new world ideas and have real people on the show with real stories and real connections and conversations. I like to talk about handshakes that have changed my life over the course of the years. And, when I look at from a professional standpoint, there was a handshake that stood out many times over and have referenced this relationship over the course of 25 years. And I'm really excited to introduce Bob Schad, who was my very first mentor coming out of college and my very first professional job out of college at Crest Office Furniture. And Bob was the owner. You've recently sold that a few years ago, but welcome to Handshake and a Smile. Excited to have you on the show today.
Thanks, Matt. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So, jumping right in, as I was preparing for the show, I was thinking about just old memories of, how our relationship started. I remember I had just moved back from North Carolina. My wife and I were actually staying at my mother-in-law's house, just graduated college. She was allowing us to stay there, and I was in search of, a job to get started. My wife had picked up something, and so scouring the classifieds, which is what we did back then, right? And actually didn't find a whole lot. And I think I just cold called and stopped in, if I remember correctly, and asked if there was anything available, in a sales capacity, because that's kind of what I was looking to do is sell. And this was a time where I had no experience. I came in kind of hat in hand and introduced myself, and you took the meeting and, gave me my very first opportunity. And as I look back on that and sit here today, I think of, a lot of different lessons that I learned over a short period of time because, I worked over there a little over a year and then moved on. But, during that time, you taught me some things that have stuck with me for the past 25 years. So first I want to thank you for that. But more so I want to dive in, like if you can recall that initial meeting or an idea of what transpired, what was it that, you decided to take a chance on? Like, was it me? Was it just your general nature and being a business owner and how you would hire staff for your team as you were building the business?
Yeah, so you asked me what I remember from that first meeting, and my memory is probably not even as good as your memory, but I'm sure that you came in for the interview, and like I had interviewed several other people, over the years, and what sticks with me is I saw a hungry young man, fresh out of college, looking for something to do, and the industry that I was in is something that I was very, very passionate about, and it's something that I like to share my passion about with other people, whether or not they actually eventually do it or not, or if it has any interest to them at all. And again, I've had a lot of different opportunities to do that over the years, but I especially like people that don't have any preconceived notion, just starting out, looking to make money. Again, very passionate about the particular industry, and I know there was money to be made.
Right.
So I'm sure that in the back and forth between us, you were saying things like, I can do this, and it's something that I could start right now and
Right.
Have a clean, fresh start.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw.
Yeah, I remember all of what you said, but I also remember a couple of things that were highlights. And I remember you saying that you liked military and athletes as folks that you would take a chance on. I was not military, but I was a former, NCAA football player, and some of the skill sets that you learned through that. From
the regiment style, right?
Exactly, the regiment schedule. Finish what you start type of mentality. What we would today call a little bit of old school, because I think a lot of that's missing, right?
Yeah.
But I do remember that candidly. I also remember being the youngest guy in the building and getting paired up ultimately, when you gave me the opportunity with some folks that, not only yourself, but some others that were in the office that have been doing it for a long time, which was great because, I only had, I was just full of piss and vinegar, to be quite frank.
Sure,
I
sure.
didn't figure I could learn everything else. And, when I would see how you ran the business, I think it'd be interesting for you to give us maybe an elevator pitch of how, you got started in the business, like
Sure.
your mentor or, where you started in the office furniture business.
Sure. So I fresh out of high school, started working in the office furniture business. My father owned an office furniture company, and the company that he owned, I applied. I went to try to work for him, and he said, "You can't work here. You need to go work somewhere else. You need to learn the business somewhere else, and then you can come work here because I have a 50-50 partner, and I can't be a burden to my 50-50 partner." All of which I did not understand what he was talking about,
Right.
because what do you mean you can't give me a job, Dad?
Right.
And he said, "No, you got to go learn it somewhere else." So I went to another office furniture company, and basically, whether it was office furniture or ice cubes or whatever, it was sales, right? It was just basically sales, and I really enjoyed the sales process and everything to do with sales. So I went to work for this one office furniture company that was had a showroom where you stayed in the showroom and clients came into you and you worked with them in the showroom, and it really honed my skills of sales.
So kind of like an Ashley Furniture, maybe.
Yeah.
Something
But
like
it
that?
was office furniture. It was
Right.
office furniture,
Okay.
but it was not outside. Go calling
Right,
on people on the
Retail.
outside,
Okay,
right? Retail,
gotcha.
which made it again, a soft blow for people coming in, and but then I honed my sales skills on that. Went to school for business and finance and sales skills, and just to learn more about business in general. Worked for that company for a few years, and then people started coming in and saying, "Hey, aren't you Frank Schad's son? Why are you working here? Why aren't you working there?" And eventually, they cut me out, and I got a job with my father. And working with him, I worked with my father hand in hand for 15 years, and he was the ultimate mentor. I mean, he was all business and no dad,
Right.
and threw me to the wolves, did everything he possibly could, and really, when you brought up the word old school. Not a fan of that word, but his method of teaching was unique. It was a handshake and a smile. It was relationship building. It was just a bevy of sales techniques, basically. And when you're a young man and people are trying to tell you those things, you don't necessarily accept it so quickly.
Sure.
You're saying things like, "No, I'm just going to do it my way. Sure, you sound good, but I can do it this way."
Right.
And which just reminds me real quick, I want to jump back to a quick story.
Yeah.
I'm 15 years old. I'm going from junior high school to high school. The family moves into a condominium complex, a brand new big giant condominium complex. And my father says, "Hey, you want to make some money over the summer?" And I said, "Sure. What do you have in mind?" He said, "Well, here's this catalog. All of these condos have patios. I want you to sell patio furniture to all of these condos."
Right.
I said, "No way.
Right.
I'm not going to do that." Yeah. And he said, "Yeah, you could do that. They all need furniture, and you could just show them these catalogs."
Yeah.
So I tried it, and I knocked on one door, and they said, "No, thank you." Knocked on another door, "No, thank you." Went home, said, "I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore." And then he said, "You know what? You need to take a chair with you. Take one of our pieces of furniture with you and show it to them. And by having a prop of some sort, that'll get them more excited."
They can see it, touch it, feel it.
Yes, see it, touch it,
Right.
feel it. And I ended up selling a lot of furniture to a lot of homeowners at 15 years old.
Right.
But I also learned I learned sales technique, but I also learned the finances behind the sale, the cost of the chair versus what I'm selling it for, and all of that. And it started at a very young age, Matt. It was again a lot more sales teaching, a lot more business teaching than there was dadding, being the father.
But looking at that now and referencing it back, can you appreciate the lesson
Absolutely.
that you were being taught?
Absolutely. And like I said, we all go through that wave of we know better than our parents, and until we get past that wave where we turn back and we say, wow, that guy really knew what he was talking about,
exactly.
right? Yeah.
I'm
Everybody goes through that wave. And,
for sure.
And I share that with a lot of my friends that have young kids today. You're going to go through that wave, and they're going to think they know more than you. And eventually they're going to turn around and say, and that was a really big time in my life with my father, when I was able to acknowledge everything he taught me was spot on and worked. And those are the things that, so, fast forward, I went to work for my father and his partner, the two of them, and then the two of them wanted out of the business. I ended up buying the business from the two of them in 1995, and then ran it solo from 95 until 2018. And the lessons I learned from those two guys were it was exactly what I tried to pass along to you. It was exactly the reason why I liked sports and military people coming in, or newly married, or just had kids, or whatever. People that were hungry, that wanted to do this as one piece, and as the other piece, people that wanted to learn a new industry.
Yeah. No, I it's such a cool, story to hear about, those lessons that were taught that we don't quite appreciate until years after when we're playing Monday morning quarterback, right? Mm-hmm. My son, same way. I have situations where, I can recall that being said to me, and now, oh my God, these are the same words coming out of my mouth now, Mm-hmm. And it's always a race or an exercise to try to get them to see the, why behind it, right? Not that you're just trying to be an asshole or whatever, but there's a message and there's a lesson to be learned. So as you took the business over, did you find yourself leaning into those lessons, or did you, have a combination of referencing those lessons and then carving your own way, carving your own kind of trailblazing yourself?
So it was a little bit of both, mm-hmm. and then combine that with there were two owners, my father and another guy, mm-hmm. and both of them did business a really different way. Mm-hmm. So I kind of took the best from both of them,
right?
And learnned. From one guy, I learned that life is not all about working, mm-hmm. and the other guy was work comes first and everything else comes second,
right.
And so the blend of that. But yeah, I did take advantage of all of that, all those lessons. Sure. They continually grew on me and meant more to me over the years. But I was so excited, Matt, when you called me up to do this show. I love the title Handshake and a Smile, because for me, that really is what it's all about. And I was always very big on relationship building. Mm-hmm. And I know that in today's day, it's less important. Mm-hmm. A lot of people say it's non-existent, mm-hmm. But I think that but I do think it's existent. Yeah. I think people are still doing it, and I think it kind of comes in waves, but sure. I think it's everything.
100%. When we first decided to kind of go down this path of doing the show with this type of a theme, the goal is not to how you hear from people, oh, things were so much better, in this generation, or things were, it's not, today's world has no idea.
Right.
I always hate hearing that too, because progress is great, right? Whether it's technology, it's the evolution of how people engage with each other, interact. We need that, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean that we have to completely forget about good things from previous generations that are still applicable today. And I agree 100%. Relationship building, I don't care how advanced we are. You can have the most advanced piece of technology out there. Who are you going to sell it to if you don't have a relationship that you've built, if a handshake that you've made, a connection that you made through smile, whatever it is, because that still matters. And I think, guys like you and me, and I think there are plenty of other people out there that have that same philosophy. And it's, just marrying up progress with a few things that I think last the test of time, and this is one of them. But I was thinking about as well, one of the opportunities as we kind of fast forward into my role at Crest. I was in business development. You had me, cold calling and partially over the phone off of lists and whatever I could procure. And then also going out in the field and just knocking on doors, which is a lost art today. Like, I think, everybody is so, head down and trying to use technology, but there are ways to still kind of bootstrap sales efforts. And one of my proudest moments at Crest was when I came to you. We sat down before and you kind of gave me the game plan. You told me, hey, this is how you can be successful. And I came to you. Do you remember TMB?
Sure.
So that was one that I found. I don't remember his last name, but I remember Colin.
Oh, Colin Waters.
Yes. And I cold called them and had no idea what I was doing, to be quite frank. It was pretty early on, but I was just, kind of a lead procurer, and I remember getting it into your hands and which you ran with it and closed the hell. I think it was a significant sale, if I remember correctly. But I remember going into, you had sales meetings every Monday morning, and it was, everybody around the conference room table and, projecting on the screen numbers and sales goals and things like that. And for the first few months, I had nothing to contribute. It was just like, you get to me and you'd be like, keep grinding, keep pounding, keep going out there. Don't give up. And then I remember that Monday following when we had gone beyond just meetings and you actually sold the deal, that I was able to be like, all right, I brought something to the table. And for me, that was a proud moment in my time at Crest. And I got some few other things, but nothing like that. So, fast forward to today, as I have the companies that I have, and I, look at like celebrating success and celebrating small wins, big wins. When you were leading the team, what would you say, around the sales folks that you had, or even, members of the team that did other functions for the team? What was your philosophy on like celebrating and building culture within the company?
Great question, and that is something that I really paid attention to, because I have learned over the years that there's so many different management styles, and mine was one of we're all in this together, and part of that was we all shared in a bonus structure for total sales for the month. Right. And if we hit a particular number, everybody got an extra check for something, from the driver in the warehouse to the receptionist to the salespeople. Everybody got that extra check, and I think we probably were successful in doing that for a 4-year run at one point in time. And but the philosophy being, especially with a new salesperson such as yourself, one of my key words was patience, right? Because people, young people, new people into a new industry, patience is a tough word, right? And people just want to do it. They want to make a commission. They want to get money. And I would try to set up the expectations really early on with, you're not going to make any money for like the first year, right? And most people go, what do you mean I'm not going to make any money for the first year? And I'm going to prove you wrong, and I'm going to do it in the first few months or whatever. But having had the experience of watching people do that, the year was probably a better mark. And so you mentioned the whiteboard when we have the sales meeting. So we have the sales meeting every Monday morning. I would put the whiteboard, I'd put the sales numbers up there. The idea being, not to embarrass anybody, but just to kind of put some competition out there, just to get the juices flowing. God, I really want to be on that board, just as you said. And it was effective. It was effective. People either really wanted to be on the board, or they would just give up.
It was effective because it fucking sucked looking at a zero week after week.
Oh yeah, I've heard that a number of times.
That's why I'm so happy.
But that is the big effect of that was we're all in in this together
Right.
as far as the business was concerned.
Right.
I think that was very, very helpful. What I see a little bit in today's world is, a little bit in the corporate culture is, we're all in this just for me, the owner, whoever it is, and,
Yeah.
You guys are expendable and
Right.
on and on and on.
And then let's throw it in the people's faces.
Yeah, yeah.
Today.
Oh my God. That disturbs me, but at the same time, I have to realize that it's a different management style,
Sure.
right? It may disturb me, and that person may be doing 10 times as good as I ever did. So,
Right. And everybody's going to have a little different way of doing things. I get that. But I think that there's a personalization as well. I want to kind of riff off of what you just described as, when you would put those numbers up. And, that generation, including myself, like, again, you see my shirt today, analog generation, right? Like we were built different, compared to today. And, you come from the same time frame. And we're in a society now where, not calling somebody out, but making them, aware of their shortcomings as far as performance goes, whether it's sports or it's business or whatever, putting that out there and recognizing it and accepting it and making you more hungry, more, go out. I want to fix this, right? That mentality of fuck that. I'm not staying at a goose egg. Next week I'm coming back with something, right? And then stepping up from there. I'm curious on where you see where, business is at today and, just generally in our world, like, about like ninth place medals and, we reward participation and we reward, and I'm not trying to be like not empathetic to participating in something, but I also think that, the real world is if you, go out and interview for a job and you have 10 people and there's one position, only one's going to make it. So do we celebrate the 9 others that didn't? No. So curious on where you stand in terms of like the balance between awareness of and getting better and using it as motivation to achieve and strive for more versus like, being put kind of like, well, we just, because that's a style as well, right? So curious on your thoughts on that.
First thing that comes to mind is an example of when my son was playing Little League baseball, and he was a pitcher, he was a catcher, but invariably we'd come off the field, we'd get into the car, and my wife would start saying, "Oh, you did so good today, honey. You did so good today.
Right.
You did so good." And in my mind, I'm going, "He did not do good today, right? He did not do good today."
Right.
And so she would get out of the car for some reason, and I would be left in the car with my son, and I would say, "Hey, let me be the voice of reason, okay? You did not do good today.
Right.
You missed a bunch of balls. As a
Yeah.
catcher, you struck out 4 times, whatever it is.
Right.
And I don't want to give you false expectations that that's a good thing, right? Those
Right.
are, you have to try harder. You have to take more batting cage. You have to practice a little bit more.
Right.
And the funny thing is, many years later, he remembers those stories and he says, "Dad, I really appreciate you having said that to me, because had I have just been, oh, it's all okay, everything's fine, it's all going to be good." So yeah, again, I never want to generalize, because I think that people do that. There's just many different ways of doing that. The whole silver spooning thing is just making it maybe too easy. So then people don't learn how to become their own people as they get older.
Right.
And I mentioned that my father said, "Go work somewhere else," right? And I've told that story to other people before, and they've shaken their head like, "Why would he do that?"
Right.
And I'd say, "Well, it was the greatest thing he did,
Right.
because he could have just let me come in,
Yeah.
could have let me just flounder around or whatever
Sure.
it is, but but his suggestion was to go do it somewhere else and learn it somewhere else, or at least get some another example." So yeah, I hear what you're asking, and the I think in today's world, again, not wanting to generalize, but I do see less communication. oddly, we have more ability to communicate through phones and through technology.
Right.
And I see that there's less communication.
Yeah.
I always remember my daughter, as she was growing up, I'd be talking about the furniture industry with her, and I was talking about like panel walls.
Yeah.
You remember
Right.
panel walls,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And there was always the question of, how high is the panel wall? And the whole idea behind that partition wall was to create little private spaces for people to be able to focus and work, right?
Right.
And I believe that it ruined a generation of people that couldn't see each other and couldn't collaborate and couldn't communicate because they were stuck in these.
Those things were like 84 inches.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It was like you were in a box.
And then they had the little overhead
Yeah.
storage, and you were in a little box, right?
Yeah.
A 6x6 or 6x8 box, right? I think that it
Promotes isolation.
I literally think it ruined a generation of people that were needed that whole mentorship. And the perfect example is my daughter calling me up as an intern out of college. She was working for this entertainment company, and she calls me up and said, "Dad, I'm in one of those cubicles, and my manager is in the cubicle next door. Do I text them? Do I call them on the phone?
Right.
Do I knock on the panel? How do I talk to my manager who's next door?" I said, "You get up and you walk around and you go, look them in the eye."
Right.
But she didn't know, and I imagine there's lots of people out there that are sitting in those cubicles that don't know, how do I talk to these people?
Right.
So.
Yeah, no, communication. I mean, I think, as I look at our business and how we manage it, and bring people onto the team, those are some of the key things that I'm looking for off the rip, right? Like I really don't give a shit what they've done in college. Like I really don't. It's great. What a degree shows me today is you have the ability to start something in year 1 and finish it in year 4 or 5, whatever it takes. Sometimes for an advanced degree, it's longer. That's really what it tells me, especially as I'm interviewing folks in, the millennial or the Gen Z generations. And what I'm interested in is like, do you have the intangibles, right? Like, do you have work ethic? Do you have character? Do you have integrity? Do you have hustle? Do you have all these things that can't be taught necessarily? They're just innate traits that we carry based on oftentimes how we were raised, or, and then we can teach you everything else. That's something that I, as I look back at our relationship and how I got started, you found some things and figured I would say the same thing. We can teach him the X's and O's, but is he going to go out and make, 20 calls a day in the field and 100 calls over the phone, right? Like those, you either have it or you don't.
Or as an example, using you as an example, or leave me in a year, go start his own business, build it into a gigantic organization, build 5 more businesses off of that. Yeah, that all came out of that guy that was playing football that came in the door that day that said, "Hey, give me a start." Yeah. And yes, to your point, Matt, I definitely recognize the work ethic. I definitely recognize the hunger, the drive, the capability of learning, because I knew, obviously, you knew nothing about the furniture business, right?
Right.
But that can be taught, right? I have there was, while I still owned the company, before I sold it, I hired my nephew, and my nephew graduated from college. Didn't know what he wanted to do. He got a communications degree, and he didn't know what he wanted to do. I talked to my cousin, and I said, "What do you think he's going to do?" And he said, "I don't know. Why don't you talk to him?" And I met with him, talked to him a little bit about our industry. He was very interested in it, and he's been there 11 years now, and he's killing it.
That's awesome.
He's doing fantastic, and this is, I love when someone goes from 0 to 100. When someone that doesn't know anything about something learns something about it and then makes something out of it.
No, it's awesome to hear. I mean, I love success stories like that. And going back to me, I for those of you who don't know the story behind it, but referencing, was there for a short period of time, learned a lot, and then went on to, do my own thing. I gotta tell you why, right? Why that was me. And I remember driving into that parking lot every morning. I saw this beautiful BMW sitting in the first slot of the parking spaces, headed into the building. I would watch how Bob lived his life, how you lived your life, and I was like, that's you were able to go on vacation, you were able to do, you were at a point in your career that you're able to, reap the benefits of that hard work, right? And I admired that, and that admiration turned to even more drive for me. What I recognize from that is I go, Bob works for himself. And if I am going to want to have a life like that and build something cool, I'm going to have to work for myself, right? And so what that is, I don't know, but I knew I wanted that, right? And, so that was really like, I envied, what you had built for yourself, and it drove me to, where we are today. So I thank you for that. And my wife thanks you.
Absolutely.
And family. So, shifting gears a little bit, the show is called Handshake and a Smile, right? And I'm really interested in to know, like, when there's probably several handshakes that were impactful for you, but is there one that stands out in particular that may have changed the course of, yourself and Crest Office? Like, was it potentially a big deal that you closed that, slingshot, Crest forward into being able to do more? Like, I'm really curious as what that handshake for you was that may have changed directionally where you were headed personally.
Tough question for me, because so many answers, right? So many handshakes over the years, and the couple that stand out the most. One I'm going to use a kind of a double example, which is it's the same thing as meeting you for the first time, and shaking your hand and getting to know you and bringing you in. When I first started off in the furniture business, there was this guy, a manufacturer's rep named Jay Fox, and Jay Fox lived out here in Santa Clarita, coincidentally. And this is a long, long time ago when there was not many houses, but a lot of businesses out here.
Right.
And Jay Fox said, hey, and I was just starting off as a salesman, kind of the same way you were. Didn't really know anything about it, had some ideas. And Jay said, come with me. I'm going to, spend the day with me, and I'm going to show you how to do this. And I said, okay. And we drove out to Santa Clarita from downtown Los Angeles at the time.
Right.
We drove to Santa Clarita, which was like we might as well have been in Victorville. And
a long way away at that time.
And we drove out here in his van. We parked the van and we started walking door to door to businesses and introducing ourselves and saying, hey, we'd like to talk to the person in charge of furniture.
Right. And
the receptionist would always say, well, do you have an appointment? And we'd say no. And they'd say, well, you can't see this person without an appointment. And they'd say, okay, well, can we get a business card? And the receptionist would give us the business card of that facilities manager or whoever the purchasing person was. And we get the card from one company, from the next company, always the same thing. And then Jay said, come on, we're going to go to lunch. And we went to lunch at probably a Denny's or something over here. And we ate our lunch, and then Jay took me over to the payphone at the time, a payphone, and took those business cards out and called up all of those people and said, hey, I'm in the neighborhood. Can I come see you?
Right.
And they'd say, sure, come see me.
Yeah.
And we got back in the van, and we drove back to those businesses and went in, and the receptionist said, what are you doing back here? And they'd say, we have an appointment with the person. And that made such an impression on me, such an impression of getting that business card, the handshake at the first meeting with these people. And those I would say, 5 out of 10 of those meetings became lifelong clients of mine. Awesome. And that was really Matt, as you know, one of my main things was I always wanted my clients to be lifelong clients, right? And so when I met them and I smiled at them and I shook their hand, I said, you're going to be a customer of mine for life. And they'd laugh at me like, okay, right.
Right.
And they, I could say that through my entire career. I just kept building clients.
Yeah.
Didn't lose very many.
I remember candidly. I mean, to this day, I remember going back to the sales meetings. And you're like, yeah, I just sold this job. He's been with us for 15 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You had your book of business was like, it was just on recycle because they just kept coming to you whenever there was a need. It was awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, all of that. I mean, you asked me the question, what is the most important? Handshake and a smile. It's all of those clients, everybody that, basically everybody I've met. But then the other one that I was thinking of was split-second timing. How things happen just, amazingly. You don't know what's going to happen. And I was invited to a party for my accountant and his wife, and I went to this party. Was there for a little while. Didn't really meet too many people. Was getting ready to leave. I walked out the door. I gave my ticket back to the valet guy, and up pulls this car, and these two girls jump out of the car, and I looked at them, and I said to the valet guy, "I'll take my ticket back." And I took the ticket back, and I walked in with these two girls, and one of them became my wife. And
Wow.
and we, I often think about split-second timing, right?
Yeah.
Bumping into people, that amazing first opportunity to meet someone like yourself, Matt. And what a life-changing experience that can be, or not. If had my car have come first and I drove away, it'd be a different story.
Totally different story.
Yeah.
Oh, I had no idea. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
so cool to hear. And I agree with you. I think that there's, it's a loaded question. What's the one handshake that changed your life? We have many, right?
Yeah.
I think that's the point here is that, you hit the nail on the head with the constant pursuit of building relationships, personal relationships, business relationships, having that at the forefront of, how we engage with people on a day-to-day basis. It never goes out of style, and it's a much needed, I think, trait in people to explore that and not, let technology ruin your opportunity to meet who's next, by having your face buried or not looking somebody in the eye, any of that. It's funny when you were talking about your time with Jay and basically, taking the first half of the day to collect cards and being shut down, and then, flipping that into appointments in the back half of the day. It reminded me of I just took my son out, who's learning the business here. And I took him out and we went cold calling as well, and a little different outcome, but he's trying to learn the pitch and master the pitch of what we do with our AI platform, Vinci. And so I said, let's go out, we'll go, talk to folks. And he's calling on restaurants and retail and things like that. So we go into this restaurant, and it's busy, and I had told him, I said, hey, you kind of don't want to go to restaurants, between the 12 and 1 o'clock hour. Probably not going to like that too much, but as it stood, that's what happened. So we go in there, and he goes, will you do the call? And I said, sure. So we go in, I was like, hey, I'm, Matt, and he looks at me, and the guy's got like 2 plates in his hand. And I said, are you the manager? And he's like, yes, I am. And he's got literally 2 plates in his hand. I was like, he goes, don't you see the sign? It says no solicitation. And I fire right back. I said, sir, this is not a solicitation. This is an opportunity. And it stopped him dead in his tracks. And he goes, what do you got? You know what I mean? So we kind of went into it quickly. I said, go deliver those and come back, and, maybe we can schedule a time later. Wind up, getting the appointment for a more conducive time. But as we're walking out, and those opportunities to, go in pairs, and learn from somebody else, we call them ride-alongs. And, I remember my son looking at me, he goes, did you just say this is not a solicitation, but an opportunity? He's like, he goes, I would have never thought of that. You know what I mean? And so to this day, it's like part of his repertoire, right? Like, so I think that, when we tie this all together, it not only builds connection, but it builds experience too. And it puts tools in our bag to be able to use and leverage later on. And if you start to compile enough of them, you become a pretty amazing salesperson or whatever it is that you're doing. And that's, I think, the key to learning, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thinking about learning and, how did you find yourself, or did you, lean into resources to learn, was it self-help books? Did you, look into, autobiographies of other successful folks in different businesses that you would pick and pull from? Like, how did you educate yourself or stay afloat of what was going on as you were kind of, because how busy life is when you're building a business. Did you leverage any of that, or did you kind of just?
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure, I've always been an avid reader, and I do like to read about successful people and people that have successful people, but also people that have changed other people's lives. I think that's people that have been kind of in the in the service industry,
Right.
or making a difference in this world type of thing, and I'm really big on that. And early on, I'm a big believer in if you choose an industry to be in, whatever that industry is, to try to educate yourself with every possible thing you can think about it. It's funny, that's been a lifelong thought of mine, and where it comes from is from boxing. I always remember, one of the greatest of all time, Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson would say, the reason why I'm so good is because I studied all the people that were really good before me, right? And I really heard that, and it made a indelible mark in my brain, saying, I need to learn from the people that may not even be alive anymore, but just have been in this industry before, have been in sales before, have owned their own business before, and I'd say a big part of that is knowing what you don't know, right? Being able to being accepting of people's ideas and thoughts. I have a little sticker over my desk in my office, and the sticker is "Asshole." Asshole, right?
I like that.
Yeah, and it kind of represents people that ask questions but don't listen to the answers, right? And I don't want to be that person. I want to be someone that really a sponge, right? I want to take it all in, and that's a daily process until you die, right? Sure. I love learning new things every day, but I do want to go back to one thing. You're talking about your son, and something that my son, his high school, the principal of the high school, I bumped into him one day, and he said, Bob, what is it that you do with your son? And I said, what do you mean, Mr. Scrumbus? Well, I bumped into him at a grocery store the other day. And at the time he was 13 years old, right? I bumped into him at a grocery store the other day, and he walked up to me, put his hand out, shook my hand, and said, "Hi, Mr. Scrumbus, how you doing?" And he said, "I've never had a student do that before." Right? The fact that he came to me, and most people are a little afraid of me or don't want to talk to me or whatever it is. Whatever you're doing, Bob, keep doing it, right? Because and that has been, you mentioned taking your kid out and him picking up on they're sponges also, right?
Sure.
And they've really absorbed what the the inspiration or whatever it is that we're giving them, and just recently, my son, who's working for a new company, he got a review, and it was a peer review, and it was his first peer review for this new company that he's working for, and he sent me the peer review, and I freaking cried reading it. Right? I mean, I literally cried reading it, because and it was like 3 different people, and all 3 of them were, you're an aberration. We've never seen anybody like you before. You're so friendly and nice and helpful and do all the things that you need to do. And he he is an aberration because my son, no social media, no, there's a lot of things that he doesn't do that kids do in this day and age, and I'm so proud of him for that because he's an individualist. He just does his own thing, but he picked up on what you referred to as the old school stuff of shaking hands and smiling and building relationships and all of that.
Isn't that, as a dad, that's one thing, I gotta believe that's probably, there's moments that happen throughout our lives and, but, something like that, a story like that, hearing that, just like proud moments, right? Like we have, kids graduate high school, graduate college, get married, all that stuff. But like when I hear a story like that, that's got to be, same way that you cried at what you just mentioned. Those are got to be moments you're like, damn, we did it right. You know what I mean? As parents, right? Like they understood that. And, it triggers a memory of mine. Like I remember for both my son and daughter, we would go into parent-teacher conferences at school, right? And, they got the report card out on the table, and it's, at the time, at that age, it wasn't A, B's, and C's. It was 3s, 2s, 1s, and whatnot, and then S for satisfactory or U for unsatisfactory. And I remember my wife and I sitting there, and the teachers are going in, and I stop them right from the beginning. And I say, I don't give a shit about the grades. Tell me about their character. Are they good people? Do they have integrity? And this is when they're in, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. You know what I mean? Like, and I go, what's important to me as a dad is that they, even from that they learn the right way to interact and engage with people, to respect teachers, to respect, authority, and, be good kids. Because if they're not learning it then, the story you just mentioned, so many years after school, probably not going to happen, right? And so it's part of the fun of this show is hearing, I have my stories, but hearing from others and then finding the parallels and the common themes and stuff like that. And, I would say, applaud you and how you raised your kids.
I'll throw this one at you, Matt. So my son and daughter, both married. My son has 2 kids. My daughter has just had a baby 4 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
And thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you. And to see them being parents, mind-boggling. Just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And I was sitting with my daughter and her husband before the baby was born. They live in New York, and I spent a while with them in New York. And before the baby was born, and we're having dinner and we're talking, and we were talking about, coincidentally, we were talking about old school sayings, right?
Yeah.
And I said there's this old school saying, where the rubber meets the road, right? And they laughed and they said, we've heard that before, Dad, but I said, this is where the rubber meets the road, because you guys have you have thoughts about the way you've been raised all these years, and you're good, bad, or indifferent. Some of it you like, some of it you don't. Now's your turn.
Yeah.
And I literally, now's your turn, like in a week when the baby's born. That's when it starts, right? And the same thing for my son and his wife and their 2 kids is, and Matt, nothing brings me greater joy than to see them doing what they're doing, and to starting off as young parents. It's literally the same thing as seeing you come in on that for that first interview or for anything else. It's a brand new experience that they're going to have for the rest of their lives, and they're going to be able to pass along whatever it is they learned or liked or didn't like or whatever it is, and I'm so super excited for them.
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, and you're right. It's there's stuff that I've done wrong as parents that, there's a lot that we did right, but there's stuff that we've done wrong or maybe not, it's just, the whole point is that, take the positives, and then they create their own way of parenting style, right? Because there is no script for that, right? You just kind of get thrown in, and the time comes, and boom, you're alive.
Well, and it's funny that you say that. There's no, because that was part of the conversation that you hear things like there's no script for it, or there's no book for it, or there's, but the reality of it is there are mentors,
Sure.
right? There are people that have done it before them. There's pretty much nothing that anybody's done that someone hasn't done in the past.
Sure.
And so if you look for support groups or people that can help you learn, like you said, how did I learn, the business? What were some of the tools that I used? It's the same thing as you coming in and just starting off, learning the sales business.
Right.
There are, I guess I don't necessarily believe in, getting thrown to the wolves or you're on your own or whatever it is. I do believe firmly in asking for help, right? And so many people put themselves in a position where they feel like they're the only ones doing this, or the only one that has had a crying baby in the morning, or the only one that's had this or had that or whatever it is. And but the reality is, there's a lot of people that can help.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I want to just ask a couple questions that I had, thinking about, going back to the business side, and we talk about the success, we talk about what you ultimately were able to accomplish by taking over from your father and his partner, building it, making it your own for 20 plus years, and then ultimately selling it. We never got a chance. This is a question that I thought of because as I went on to do what I did and continuing to do in building, we never really talked at that time about as a business owner, fear or times where we fell short, where we're I can tell you in the early days building, TriSource, I would look and go, oh my God, payroll is Friday. What the fuck are we going to do? You know what I mean? And the early, and we always found a way, and then, continue to build and then, never had to look back at that. But I'm curious, in your experience, did you have a relatively smooth ride from taking over to exit, or was there turbulence that you encountered? And how did you overcome that, if there was?
So in my 25 plus years, went through 3 recessions, one mortgage meltdown in 2008. Thank God I didn't make, I sold before the pandemic, 1 year before the pandemic, which would have been another example of what could happen. And so there were a number of experiences that were not to my liking. Scary, just like you said, payroll, all of that. And the interesting thing is, the one thing that I can think of that was the catalyst that brought me through all that was, we're all in this together. And I would have those Monday morning meetings, or I'd have that all company meeting, and I'd say, here's where we're at. We're not getting, the phone's not ringing. This isn't happening. This is happening. What are we going to do? And there was one point in time during the 2008 mortgage meltdown, and the phone stopped ringing, and the stock market dropped, and all of that, where I had one of those meetings. I said, the choice is, we can either lay off people, which I never did. We can lay off people, or we can go to a 4-day work week. Okay. Your choice.
Right.
Any volunteers want to leave? Right? Nobody wanted to leave,
right.
So we went to a 4-day work week for a while during that period, and dug ourselves out of it. One thing I have that I feel strongly about is that everything's temporary. Yeah. If you panic and freak out, and maybe start making some moves that are unnecessary, it's not going to bode well. But if you take a step back and pause and look at what's going on, and take the time to figure it out, you can usually weather a storm, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, as they say, just like in any market, everything is cyclical, and things
absolutely.
are, way high and way low at times, and navigating those tough waters. I'd like to believe that your solution for, what you just described, going to a 4-day versus layoff, and other solutions that you may have, procured over the years are a result of, some of those lessons that you learned from your dad and that, tough times come and you don't bail and freak out and you just, one foot in front of the other, right?
I do have to tell you though, when I sold the business,
Yeah.
And which was it was an interesting time. I'm a big planner, so I kind of knew that I knew when I wanted to sell the business at what age, and this was a couple of years before that, and these opportunities came about, and I seized one of the opportunities. But before I did that, I asked my kids, "Hey, anybody interested?" And everybody said, "No, thanks, Dad. We're good. We're good. We're good doing what we're doing." And okay, you sure? And they said they were sure.
Yeah.
And so I took this opportunity, and the right at that time, the overwhelming feeling. Well, there was a lot of feelings. There was a lot of feelings around that.
Mm-hmm.
Am I too young? Is it, do I have enough? On and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
But the overwhelming feeling was the word unscathed. I got out,
Right.
on a high instead of on a low.
Yeah.
And that thought, again, back to the boxing analogy.
Right.
Boxers would fight, they'd be champions, and then, why don't you just go out when you're a champion instead of fighting that one more fight where you lose, and then another fight when you lose, and then people are saying he's just doing it for the money.
Yeah.
I wanted to go out on the top and feel really good about what I did, and not not push it too far. And had I pushed it another year, I would have been into another cycle of pandemic.
Think about what you said. I mean, I've heard 3 or 4 different instances in the course of this interview where timing has been everything, right? You talked about, the valet and sticking around, you know what I mean? Well, here you talk about this in your exit of your business. I'd like to think that handshake was important as well, because it got you to a point of where you could go do what you want to do, right?
Absolutely.
And, that's, they say that, opportunity typically comes when luck is the collision of opportunity and preparation colliding, right? And I'd like to believe, based on your story, very much that's the truth here, and
Absolutely.
it's so cool to hear. I want to, a couple final questions, thinking about if you're in retirement now, you're enjoying your grandkids, everything that you've worked for is ahead of you in terms of now being able to sit back and see what you've taught your kids, how they're going to, engage with their kids. If you could go back to your 25-year-old self, right? It's 2026, you're 25 years old, around there, and you're starting the business over today, right? With what you know.
Mm-hmm.
Would you make a lot of changes, or is there 1 or 2 key things that you would do differently? Not in the sense of forecasting the future, but how you would approach building the business from the experience that it gave you over the course of your career.
So am I 25 years old, but I have the knowledge of what I have today?
Yeah.
And do I have the tools
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more about what you've learned over those years, over the course of your career, and how that may change your approach to getting started then. Not necessarily the technology, like that, but just what you've learned, kind of hard knocks type of thing.
The real answer is not much.
Yeah.
Not much. I'm very happy with the way things went. I know, only because I study this kind of stuff, I know it could be very different.
Mm-hmm.
But I took a class once at UCLA, and it was changing from entrepreneurship to a professionally managed business. Mm-hmm. It was the transition from entrepreneurial to professionally managed business. And my business was growing enough to where I needed to pay attention to that. I'm not a mom and pop shop anymore.
Right.
We're doing really well. And the emphasis of that class was to spend more time thinking about how to make the business better and less time on how to take care of the clients. And I thought, that's not what I want to do. I want to take care of the clients, because I think if I take care of the clients, business is going to get better.
Right.
Yes, it did convince me I needed to hire a controller, and I needed to hire over the years, I had a lot of really, really great people around me that knew more than the things that I didn't know, right? And was always open to having those people around me. But I don't know that I would do anything too much different, Matt. If in my, starting at 25, I could answer. I could say, I would have expanded more, or I would have scaled up more, or I would have gone faster, all those things. But oddly, going back to my father for a second, one of his favorite sayings was, "Stay small and keep it all."
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that.
Sure.
And I had many peers in my industry over the years saying, "Bob, you could have been so much bigger." And I would say I was really happy the size that I was, because those peers that were saying that were all going bankrupt and going out of business and having bigger problems.
Right.
And I was comfortable where I was.
I think that answer says a lot about what, as entrepreneurs, listen to this, or business owners listen to this. It's always the pursuit for more.
Scale up.
And there's some truth to that in certain things. And I think personality type and, personal goal setting that you have as a business owner or an entrepreneur. But there's something to be said for, what you just described, because as I hear your story, I don't hear a lot of changes. I don't hear a lot of regrets. I don't hear, that you would have done a whole lot things differently, right? And if you can look back not only on your life, but, we're talking, more about the business side of things, and look back on it and go, I did it right. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, you look yourself in the mirror and you can say, I did it right, and I'm happy with the outcome, and I achieved what I wanted to achieve. I don't think there's a greater pat on the back or, feeling that you can have, I'm not there yet, but when I do get there, I hope that, what you're describing here today are, the outcomes that I get to achieve. So
you'll get there.
All right. We're still going 100 miles an hour, but we're going to get there one day, and it's a fun journey.
It is a fun journey, and business is fun. Sales are fun. It doesn't really matter what you're selling or what you're doing. It's just the whole art of it and being involved. And one thing, Matt, that I think is important to say is that for some reason in my business, I always felt that it was very reciprocal. Yes, I was selling a product to somebody that they needed,
right,
and I was helping them because they needed it, right? And I wanted to be the best at what I could be to offer them that service, and therefore they paid me.
Yeah,
and they paid me for being the best at what I did, and it was very reciprocal.
Yeah, and here in our office we call that win-win partnerships, right? Like we're supplying. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That that's the best. You never want to feel like, culturally speaking, you never want to feel like, we, took advantage of this person, or took advantage, you know what I mean? Like, because then you're never going to get what you described. You're never going to get the lifelong client.
Right.
As soon as somebody thinks that they've been, screwed over or whatever, they're not coming back. Right.
Right.
And so that's the lesson that I learned from you as well, is that, we have some really long-term partnerships, and I attribute that to some of the things that you had said early on in my career, that, that's the best compliment you can get, right? Somebody picks up the phone that you did business with a couple of years ago, and they come right back to you when the need arises.
Or they say, Matt's my guy.
Yeah, right? Yeah, Matt's my guy. Exactly.
Right.
We hope that's the case always. One last question I have for you. Piece of advice that you would give any business owner, somebody coming up today, think of myself walking in the door today. Any pearls that you would share that, one or two key things that maybe you would offer to be the launch pad of somebody looking to go out and hustle again and learn the art of sales, learn, how to be a contributor to a team.
Well, the first thought that comes to mind is my longtime accountant who I love to death, and his one bit of advice was keep your costs down and your sales high.
I couldn't agree more. I don't know if there's a better answer, right?
Right.
Keep your costs down and your sales high.
Keep your costs down and sales high. Either work on your costs or work on your sales.
Right.
And that really, like I said, I tried to surround myself with people that helped. And Andrew was one of the biggest helps in the world.
That's awesome.
And obviously, you've been in that accountant's office, and they've said your costs are too high, or your sales are too low, or whatever it is. And so, what other piece of advice would I give would be, have fun at what you're doing, and don't take yourself too seriously, and just enjoy it, because we only have this one life to live, and if we're not having fun doing it, then we're wasting it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, I can't tell you how much of a treat this was for me to have you in today.
Same, Matt. I really appreciate it.
This has been awesome to, reminisce about the old days, and, I'll continue to check in with you as I do and bounce things off of you and keep you updated on what we're doing here. But I'm forever grateful for what you taught me over the years, and appreciate that. And thank you again for coming on today.
Thank you, Matt.
All right. I
appreciate it.
Guys, thank you for another great episode. Again, remember, keep your handshakes firm, your smiles genuine, and your word even stronger. Until next time, we'll see you. Hey, everyone. If you like what you saw today, please go ahead and subscribe, ring the bell, share, and comment. We love doing this show and hope that you support the cause. Thank you so much.